That's a tough life to live, Mike Dodge.
It's a rough life. And you can turn the travel hacking game into something that's going to drastically increase your credit score.
So I learned my lesson. We'll never make that mistake again.
The possibilities are just endless if you start to learn about how transferable points work.
By the end of every month, I had so many miles that I didn't even think I was gaining.
I think travel hacking to me is also more than just points and miles.
Welcome back to the How Was Your Trip podcast. Today, I am so pumped for this episode. I got the chance to interview Mike Dodge, travel hacking expert and head writer for Daily Drop, the travel hacking platform founded by Kara and Nate. A lot of times I hear excuses from people on why they don't travel, and most of the time they have to do with finances. My hope from today's episode is that it encourages you and teaches you that travel might be more attainable than one might think by capitalizing on points and miles. By capitalizing on points and miles and playing the travel hacking game, an entire new world is opened up to travel. So come along this journey with me today, and hopefully we will all learn something from travel hacking expert Mike Dodge. Lights, camera, action. Great. All right, Mike Dodge, welcome to the How Was Your Trip podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's jump right on in. I would love to know, who are you? How did you get into travel hacking? How did you end up where you are now?
Great question. Sometimes I don't exactly know how I ended up where I am now, but my name is Mike. I write a travel newsletter called Daily Drop. It's all about travel hacking using points and miles and other travel hacks to travel on highly subsidized travel. I won't say free, but the idea is to get as close to free as possible with travel. And I send out a daily newsletter about that. But how I got there, weird question, or weird answer rather. I come from a music background.
Okay.
I have 3 college degrees in opera performance, and that is what I did for a long time before stumbling upon a random job posting by Kara and Nate, the famous YouTube travelers, which somehow ended up in me getting this job. And that is now what I do, traveling the world pretty much full time and writing a daily newsletter to about 1 million people.
That's amazing. So obviously you were following Kara and Nate before that, as most people who love to travel do. So were you already traveling a lot during that? And were you already travel hacking before you applied for this job?
Yeah. So as a freelance musician, travel hacking was basically the only way I could afford to travel at all. I've always loved travel pretty much since I graduated from college and started traveling for opera. Actually, I got a little bit of work outside of the country, fell in love with it, and that's how I stumbled into points and miles. At first, it was very, very low key, just doing very simple things like racking up little bits of points from things like shopping portals and taking short, cheap flights around the US. And it turned into a much, much bigger game for me of just trying to solve this puzzle of how can I earn the most points in the fastest and cheapest way, and then how can I redeem those to maximize the amount of travel I do. I got really just kind of obsessed with it over the years, even while I was still a professional musician. And yeah, now it's just turned into something much, much bigger, but over a really long period of time. It started slow for me and then sort of ramped up.
Did you already write at all? Because I mean, obviously the majority of your job is finding these points and miles hacks, but also writing 5 times a week an entire newsletter. Yeah. And that's a skill in itself.
I honestly don't know how that happened. I don't have any writing experience at all. I think that the way that I write for Daily Drop is very casual in nature. It's almost as though I'm sitting at a bar telling a friend about points and miles. That's really what Kara and Nate wanted when they started Daily Drop and hired for the role. And so, yeah, I think it was a nice... I didn't have the writing skill set, but I did have the travel skill set. And so the way I approach it is just writing down the exact words that I would say if I were just talking to someone, and it seems to work well. I'm very lucky that that's the case.
Yeah, no, I mean, that everything you just said is exactly what I think when I read the Daily Drop newsletter. I read it every single day.
Oh, cool. Okay. I don't even read it every day.
Oh, well, I do. And it does. It's very conversational. It's very witty. It's very entertaining. And so even someone that might not be in the travel hacking game very hardcore will still enjoy the newsletter. And you can take pretty much something from every newsletter because of the different sections, which is great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think that's really our goal with Daily Drop. I think in the points and miles space, in the travel hacking space, there are a lot of resources out there, a lot of amazing blogs, websites, even other newsletters. But sometimes there's almost this gate that if you've never been involved with points and miles, it can be really intimidating, kind of difficult to understand. No one's really breaking down the terminology in every single article or blog post. And so our goal was to approach it from a let's talk about this in the most casual way for people who have never been involved with miles and points, and do it in a fun, sort of less pretentious way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think a lot of the time there's this focus on, oh, let's fly like business and first class and stay in these luxury hotels. And if you don't do it that way, and if you don't understand what we're saying, you're wrong.
Right.
And we're trying to approach it from the other side of the spectrum.
I love that. That's great. So for someone who is not in travel hacking but would want to start, how do you even get started in the points and miles game?
There are plenty of ways to do it. I think one very easy way is to just take the travel you're already doing and make sure you're earning points and miles in the smartest way possible. So if you already fly a lot on airlines like Southwest or Delta or United, maybe you're not racking up as many miles as you could be from just using a frequent flyer number. That's a very simple way to do it.
Right.
Maybe spending a few extra dollars on a flight with a full service carrier like United or Delta or American, so that you can start to rack up points and benefits as opposed to flying, say, Frontier or Spirit. Mm-hmm. And then I think the biggest way or the fastest way to just ramp up your travel hacking game is with credit cards. That's just how it is.
Right.
A lot of people are sort of intimidated or think there's some kind of crazy catch to it, which if you're not responsible, there is. But if you are responsible with credit cards, it is by far the easiest and fastest way to just start raking in miles and points, getting into the world of transfer partners with banks, getting, I think travel hacking to me is also more than just points and miles, like earning points and redeeming for travel. It's about getting benefits that you otherwise wouldn't get, getting airport lounge access, getting access to parts of the world you wouldn't normally be able to access very easily, getting benefits like upgrades and free checked bags, basically just unlocking experiences that otherwise without travel hacking you wouldn't be able to experience.
Absolutely. I think I've been traveling a lot more recently with people who don't travel a ton. And I remember I was booking a flight for one of my coworkers who I was just like, oh, what's your loyalty number? Just trying to like make sure that her miles were being recorded. And she was like, oh, we're gonna set that up when we get a credit card. And I was like, you could be gaining so many miles. I had parents who set me up one as soon as I turned 2 years old. So I've been gathering miles my entire life. Wow. And we have a son who just turned 2. So we set him up Delta, United, and American, at least domestically for now, or, some international flights. He will be getting miles on those starting at 2, so that when he does start traveling by himself, he does have a good bank to start with.
Yeah, that's very smart. I think one of the best things anyone can do is exactly that, signing up for pretty much every loyalty program with an airline that you can, so that when you do fly, you're earning points, but also there are all kinds of promotions that can give you like bonus points on your first flight as a loyalty member. And it's just a great way to have that safety net of making sure that you're at least earning miles and points in all your travel. So that's really cool to hear. Yeah,
absolutely. And then even just the benefits you mentioned. I recently, last year, brought a friend into a lounge that had never been in a lounge before. And just watching her eyes open up of like, this is in an airport.
Oh yeah, lounges are the best way to get somebody excited about travel hacking. That's, I think, really what got me excited about travel hacking at first. It's a total game changer. It's normally something that in the past you can only experience if you're flying business or first class.
Right.
And so when you can just do that for free flying economy, even before, a budget airline flight on Spirit Airlines or something, when you can get a bunch of free food and drinks,
Oh, yeah.
it just elevates your experience.
Oh, yeah. I had bought that flight back of the plane with miles, but I was still in there with the first class individuals because of the credit card that I obtained. So we kind of talked a little bit about strategies. Are there any beginner resources you would recommend for someone as they're starting out?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of great resources online. I think, Daily Drop, you should read. We actually do, aside from the newsletter, we have a ton of what we call Miles and Points 101 resources that our community manager, Megan, has done a great job with. We have tons of free resources. We have our Daily Drop Lounge, where there are, tens of thousands of other people just discussing, asking questions. So, I'm totally biased, obviously, but Daily Drop is a great resource for beginners.
Well, and it goes back to what the newsletter was too. I think everything on the Daily Drop website and even within the lounge, when you guys communicate with other people in the lounge, I think you guys dumb it down, but not in a way that people read it and feel dumb. It's just an easy way to understand what travel hacking is and how you can capitalize on points and miles. And so I do think it is one of the best resources out there for beginners as they're starting out.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's what we try to do. We try to take it to like the absolute basics and just not assume everybody knows anything in term, even like what is a point, what is a mile, what is the difference between those two things. We just sort of break it down. We say, here are some definitions. Here are some very foundational tools and like tactics you can use for miles and points. And I think that's really what draws people to Daily Drop.
Is there an easy go-to effective travel hack that you think every single person should know when they get into this game?
Yes, definitely. Well, it's plenty, but I think the most valuable travel hack that you can get in the habit of using very early on is transferring points and miles to travel partners. That is not only the most valuable way to use your miles and points, but also the most flexible. And I have so many examples of just how flexible points and miles can be, but the general idea is that you can earn points from a credit card, say in the US, just with a random bank, say Chase or American Express or Citi or Capital One or Bank of America or any of the other ones. And with most of them, you can then transfer those to airlines and hotels. And once they're with those airlines and hotels, or I guess with airlines specifically, you can use those programs to book flights on hundreds of airlines all over the world, even airlines that aren't part of that program necessarily. For example, you could transfer points from the US to Aeroplan, a Canadian program, and then use those Canadian points to book a flight on a Chinese airline on a domestic flight within China. The possibilities are just endless if you start to learn about how transferable points work. And I think if you learn that skill early on, you're just going to stretch the value of your miles and points right from the beginning.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great go-to. All right, let's go a little bit deeper. If someone is getting started, what credit cards would you recommend them getting?
I think there are a few credit cards that pretty much anybody getting started could benefit from, but I really also think you should look at your travel habits to start. Is there an airline that you already fly a ton? If so, getting a credit card with that airline could be a great move for you. Is there a hotel program that you already use a lot? Getting a credit card with that hotel program could be beneficial. And then I think kind of working backwards from what are your travel goals? Is there a specific part of the world you want to travel to? Do you want primarily travel domestically? And looking at the various banks, looking at the transfer partners from each of those banks and saying, which of these programs would I really love to use miles and points in the most? And which credit card will let me earn points that I can transfer to those partners? That's like a really roundabout answer. A more simple answer would be the Chase Sapphire preferred card.
Yeah. we got on that last year and we love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like a great entry level card. It's not complicated. It's not fussy. It doesn't have a huge annual fee, but the points you earn are really valuable. You can earn a lot of them from everyday spend, especially in the US on normal purchases like dining and travel purchases. And the transfer partners that Chase has are some of the best out there. And so it's just a great starter card.
And it does have a pretty good sign-up bonus. I would love to talk a little bit about sign-up bonuses. How can beginners capitalize on sign-up bonuses? What are sign-up bonuses?
Sure. So a sign-up bonus is a bonus you get for signing up.
Oh, thank you.
No, so basically, when you sign up for a new credit card, the bank will offer a bonus after you spend a certain amount of money on the card within a certain time period. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, it's like 3 to 6 months for the time period, and the number of points can range from 60,000 to, who knows, 250,000. It really depends. Not all points are created equal. So a card that offers 200,000 of one type of point might be worth about the same as a card that offers 60,000 points of another kind. And so let's take the Chase Sapphire Preferred. For example, I think the sign-up bonus right now is 60,000 points. That's normally where it is. And you get those 60,000 points after you spend $3,000 over the course of 3 months when you sign up for the card. And those 60,000 points can be worth $1,200 easily if you use them with the transfer partners that I was talking about earlier. And the idea with a sign-up bonus is that you don't want to spend more money than you already would normally be spending.
Right.
The goal is to use this on your normal everyday purchases. And therefore, the points you're earning from that sign-up bonus, you can think of as pretty much free. Pretty darn close to free.
Right. And something that I try to do too is I try to pay for things for other people as well. And I think I've heard you talk a little bit about that too. So for example, my friends and I have a cruise coming up later this year. Well, someone had to put down their credit card for a $2,500 deposit. Well, that's almost all of my needed balance for the sign-up bonus. So I put it all down, but then only 500 of that was actually my money. So it was no more money than I was spending. Everyone paid me back, but I almost reached that requirement for the sign-up bonus.
Yeah, exactly. I tell people that the ultimate goal is to put more spend on your card than you would normally put without spending more money.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you described, like spending other people's money.
Yes, exactly.
And I do the same thing pretty aggressively with my friends. Like they know.
I heard you will make payments for other people that have nothing to do with you. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have friends that I have one friend who I took on a really cool trip around the world through like India and Africa last year. And he knows that if he brings me big purchases to put on my cards, that eventually I'll take him on a trip with me for free using my points.
Nice.
And so he had a bachelor party a few years ago. They rented out a big villa somewhere in Colorado. It was like $20,000.
Oh my goodness.
And he came to me and he was like, can we put this on your card? We'll send you the money beforehand. And I did. I got a huge sign-up bonus, like 150,000 point sign-up bonus, a bunch of points from the spend. It was amazing. And I would say be careful about that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's an example of my best friend since I was a kid. Right. I trust him with my life. And therefore, I was okay with doing that, especially because they sent me the money ahead of time. So if you're doing this kind of thing with your friends, it can be a really good way to strategically open a card if you know there's going to be a big expense. Mm-hmm. And then you can reward your friends later by booking them some free travel.
That's great. I love that. So redeeming the points and miles can be just as strategic as gaining the points and miles. So how can a beginner maximize and capitalize on redeeming their points and miles for the best value?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are a lot of ways to answer that. For me personally, I am kind of crazy with like the amount of travel I do and the places that I travel to, but I'll book trips to cool places in the world because I get good value from my miles and points by going there, which doesn't really apply to most people. But I think one way you can generally get better value for points and miles, let's say with airlines, for example, when you use points, let's take Delta, for example. When you're using Delta Sky Miles to book flights on Delta itself, the cost you're paying for a flight is just exorbitantly high. Yeah. Whereas Delta has airline partners that you can also use your Delta miles for. And if you're using them for partner airlines, the value is way, way better. So let's say you want to fly from New York to Mexico City and you have Delta Sky Miles. Both Delta and Aeromexico fly that route. But if you're using Delta Sky Miles for Aeromexico, you're going to get much better value than if you use them on Delta itself, because the pricing with the airline that is the airline of the program you're using, like Delta, using Delta Sky Miles on Delta, it's what we call dynamically priced, meaning if the cash cost is high, the points price will be high, whereas generally with partner airlines, it's not dynamic.
So how do you even find flights like that? How do you even know that Delta is transferred to Aeromexico? And like, are there search engines you recommend, or what's the best way to go about, or is it really just looking between your transfer partners on each one?
I think so. So in that case, if you just run a search on Delta's website and choose miles as the currency, you'll see all of these options show up. Like you'll see that Aeromexico flight show up in addition to the Delta flights. Right. So in that case, it's like right in front of you. But if you're trying to approach it from like, okay, I already know that that's the case, you can start by learning about airline alliances. So SkyTeam, oneworld, Star Alliance. Those are the three major ones where they have dozens of airlines in each alliance. And generally speaking, you can use points from any of those airlines for any of the other airlines within the same alliance. So for example, Delta, KLM and Air France, Aeromexico, Korean Air, those are all part of the SkyTeam alliance. So generally, if you have points and miles with one of those airlines, you can usually redeem it for other airlines in that alliance. And if you just you can just like Google these alliances and just see like the logos for all of the airlines that are a part of them. That's a really easy way. And then beyond that, there are plenty of sort of non-alliance airline partners. And that's just something you kind of learn over time. As you're running searches on these websites and as you're getting into the travel hacking game, you'll start to notice which airlines have partners and which airlines belong to an alliance. And I think the more time you invest into just researching that and running random searches for your upcoming travels, the faster you'll start to internalize those things.
So some people find it difficult to keep gaining points while spending points. How do you find that balance of earning enough to buy a flight, but also using your points effectively and optimizing that?
Yeah, that's something that I focus on a lot. That's my goal, is to always be earning points faster than I can redeem them. And like I said a few minutes ago, part of that is I use my points and miles in parts of the world where I get a ton of value. So I just spent like 9 weeks in Asia. I just got back like 4 days ago.
Insane.
And that's a great part of the world to, like, for example, the same like quality and type and brand of hotel in the US that cost 50,000 points a night will cost 5,000 or 10,000 points a night in Asia. Just as good, same hotel, same like loyalty program. And so you can do things like that, maybe less drastic than spending 9 weeks in Asia to maximize your miles and points, but look at going a little out of your way to get better value for your miles and points and not blowing them all on something, say in like a big city in the US. On top of that, I think something that's underrated is slow and small accumulation of miles and points. So if you're conscious of, say, if you have credit cards where you're earning points and miles, if you're conscious of every single point that you're trying to earn on every single dollar of spend, that really does add up over time. So I think that a cool strategy is having a wallet of maybe 2 or 3 good credit cards that earn points on basically every type of purchase. So if you can earn at least 2 points on 2 points per dollar on every single purchase you make, which is totally possible and quite easy, then you'll start to rack up points very quickly. When you go to the coffee shop, if you're making sure that you use a card that's going to earn you bonus points there, when you go to the gas station, making sure you use a card to pay that's going to earn you bonus points there. If you just think about this consciously with every purchase you make, you'll start to see the points add up more quickly than you might think.
Yeah, that's so true. I think even times that I'm not strategically trying to gain points, I look back at my statements, and I know that Instacart and Delta were partnering until recently. But my mom spends more on Instacart than I do, and she doesn't travel hack. So I had her account linked. And by the end of every month, I had so many miles that I didn't even think I was gaining. Same with Starbucks. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it really adds up quickly for things that you're not even really thinking about.
Yeah, totally. And I think that is good. And then also getting sign-up bonuses strategically. Like, this is something you can do. You don't want to do it in excess. Like, you don't want to be getting 5 credit cards a year just to get the sign-up bonus, but you can get like 1 or 2 every year and still be, make your credit score go up and increase, have a good relationship with the banks, not be abusing the system. And so sign-up bonuses can be used on an ongoing basis pretty strategically as well. I
think I read this recently, but how do you feel about signing up for a card, getting the bonus, and then kind of canceling at the end of the year?
Terrible.
Yeah.
I've never done that. I've done that like once.
It was twice. Too good to pass up.
Yeah, but I think that's not a good idea for a lot of reasons. First of all, the banks don't like that. You're not a profitable customer for them, so they can just close out your account altogether if you do that. Wow. Which is not good, because then you can't earn any points ever again. But also it gets really kind of hard to manage. A lot of people end up doing that and spending more than they otherwise might have because they're trying to meet all these minimum spends.
Right.
It's a bad habit to get into. And I think that in the end, you'll come out ahead if you do it more sustainably.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some pitfalls, such as annual fees, minimum spend requirements, blackout dates. What common mistakes should beginners be aware of, and how can they avoid to ensure a smooth travel hacking process?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Annual fees are something that are, when you see a huge sign-up bonus kind of enticing you, you might be like, that's a huge annual fee, but it's so good. It's such a good bonus. I'm going to do it anyways. Don't be fooled by a good sign-up bonus. I would say look at all of the benefits of the card. Like I said earlier on, pick a card that suits your travel habits.
Right.
Look at the way you fly, the way you stay in hotels, transfer partners from banks that you think you might be able to use and get value from, and work backwards from there to find credit cards that are going to suit you, so that the annual fee, even without a sign-up bonus, is going to be worth it to you. Something I try to do with all of my cards that I put a lot of effort into every year is finding ways to justify the annual fee, whether that is from benefits that come with cards like free night awards maybe, or travel credits, or just the amount of points I'm earning. I sort of track it on a pretty meticulous level to make sure that I'm not just blindly paying annual fees every year, and that I'm actually getting value from all of these cards.
Yeah, it definitely requires some responsible credit card usage.
Yes.
Are there any basic boundaries and parameters that you have around that you would give advice to? I
think at a very basic level, just always pay your credit card. It sounds like common sense, but it is a problem. Like credit card debt is a huge problem in the US especially. It's something that sucks a lot of people in and can ruin lives. And so, like I said, with a sign-up bonus and with credit cards in general, you never want to spend more money than you otherwise would already be spending.
Yeah. And
then on top of that, you always need to just pay it off on time every single month, because the second you start to incur interest, it becomes not worth it.
Yeah.
All of this, like the points and miles are nowhere near as valuable as the amount of money that you're going to end up paying in interest. And so it's not worth getting into if you're going to incur even $1 of interest.
Right. Or even if you are making big purchases, paying it off before the credit card drops. I made that mistake with the cruise exam. Actually, I paid the $2,500, but I also had a big personal expense month, and I should have paid the cruise off as soon as I made that payment, but I didn't. I waited till the credit card dropped, and my my credit score did drop a few points because of it. And so I learned my lesson. We'll never make that mistake again. But that was also a learning lesson too of, definitely pay off your credit card. But if you are going to make those big purchases, maybe go ahead and pay it off before.
Yeah, I do that all the time. That's called credit card utilization. It's one of the bigger factors in what determines your credit score. And just a quick tip there, like a very specific actionable tip is you want to keep your utilization under 30% at the most. Ideally, you want it between like 2 to 5%. That's what's going to make your credit score go up rather than going down or just staying the same. So for example, if you have a credit limit of $1,000, your balance at the end of the month, you don't want to be any higher than $300. So even if you spend $800, as Sarah said, you can pay off $500 of that before your card statement even closes at all. And then you have lower utilization, your credit score will be safe, and you'll be responsible.
That's such a great piece of advice. I think that that's a really great way to avoid risk for credit cards and still kind of playing the game there.
Yeah, and you can turn the travel hacking game into something that's going to drastically increase your credit score. It's not just like mitigating the risk and trying to not damage it. It's actually helping. And so in the future, when you want to buy a house or buy a car or something, this is something that could maybe help your credit score for that.
Absolutely. As a seasoned hacker, I'm sure you have had thousands of journeys using travel hacking, but is there one in particular that you're so proud of that you saved a ton of money, maximized miles and points, and did a really cool trip off of?
Oh, man. I mean, I've been very lucky, especially since getting this job, just to have the freedom to go wherever I want, whenever I want. In the last year and a half, I've been to maybe 60 or 70 countries. Wow. Just, it's been crazy. So I don't know if there's just one trip. I mean, my first around the world trip, I think, was special for me. Shortly after I started this job, I did a trip through Europe and then through the Middle East and then India and Asia and Japan. That was really cool just to have my first really long extended trip, mostly using miles and points to see that something like that is even possible at all. And then since then, I've done maybe 3 or 4 other around the world trips, including one that I just finished, 2 other ones last year. It's really hard to say just because I feel like I've had so many amazing trips in recent memory.
That's a tough life to live, Mike Dodge.
It's a rough life, yeah.
Oh, which one's my favorite? Wow, 60 countries since starting this job. That's, I think, even more than blessing.
I went to 50 countries just in 2023. I think 52 countries.
Wow.
And so I am on the move a lot.
So I've read a lot, and I'm pretty sure the Daily Drop recommends this as well, that you should let the flight kind of determine your dates and your location of where you're traveling to. Do you, with your job, you probably have a lot more flexibility, but would you give that piece of advice to people?
I would definitely give that piece of advice to people. The more flexibility you have, the more value you're going to get for points and miles, generally speaking. I'm trying to think of something on the other side, like, is there a reason not to? But no, generally, if you have more flexibility, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, I feel like most people are like, I want to go to Italy and I want to go in this week in May. And I think my husband and I have found that if we're just more flexible with, well, where can we afford to go? What do miles look like, in this place versus this place? Last year, we ended up in Vermont in the fall because we found a really cheap deal and we didn't really care where we went. We just wanted to go somewhere, and we had a little bit of flexibility with our dates. So we were able to capitalize on that and find some really good deals.
Yeah, that's great. I think that traveling to places in the off season is highly underrated. Like last year, I went to the Middle East in the middle of the summer. It was so hot. Nobody was going there. But to me, there's not a huge difference between like 100-degree weather in Dubai versus like 90-degree weather in Dubai. Right. It's all just hot.
It's just hot.
But the prices were like 50% lower than the rest of the year. I just went to Mongolia last month in the winter. It was like minus 35 degrees every day. but it was the most incredible experience because it was empty. It was stunningly beautiful, just vast, desolate land covered in ice and snow. Felt like a different planet. And it was incredibly affordable because it was the off season. Nobody was going. And I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. And I think whether it's Europe or whether it's Mongolia or whether it's anywhere else, the Middle East, travel to places in the off season and get an idea for what the place is really like when it's not just really expensive, crowded, filled with tourists, and you'll save a ton of money in points and miles while doing it.
I'm so jealous of your Mongolia trip. We want to go to Mongolia so badly. We're trying to make it happen next year.
Nice. I want to go back too.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. Well, maybe you can come with us. Maybe we'll all go to Mongolia.
We'll plan a group trip.
All right. You ready to play some this or that?
Sure.
All right.
I don't know what this or that is. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to name two things and you're going to tell me which one you like more. It's travel hacking edition.
Ooh, okay.
All right. So lounge access or TSA pre-check?
Lounge access.
All right. First class on a short flight for a small amount of points or on a long flight for a large amount of points?
Long flight for a large amount of points.
I agree.
But it's kind of tough because I think the first one is also a valid way to do it. But if I may expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have to be rapid fire.
I didn't used to fly business or first class at all. But in the last couple of years, I've found that something that works well for me is I try to prioritize really long flights. I'll shell out a bunch of points, and then on any flight shorter, shell out a bunch of points to fly a premium cabin like business class. And then on shorter flights, which for me is like 6 hours or less, shorter.
Yeah, sure.
I just fly economy.
Great.
And I think that works well for me, so that like most of my long haul flights now are in business class, which is amazing. But then I like really am stingy with my points on anything that's not a long haul business class flight.
Okay, this is not a this or that, but I do have a question because I've been trying to figure out personally what my personal preference is. When I am flying economy, which is the majority of the time, would I rather do one long nonstop economy class, or would I rather break it up so at least I'm not in economy class for as long?
Yeah, I struggle with that too. I think it's just depends on, for me, it's like my mood.
Yeah.
But also I'm like a huge plane nerd. So I just think it's really cool when an obscure airline flies interesting routes.
Okay.
So like I was looking at flights to Uzbekistan, and like Uzbekistan Airlines flies nonstop from New York.
Wow.
I just think that's like a cool flight. Just the fact that it exists.
That's so random.
And so like while there are plenty of ways to fly on like nice European airlines and have a layover in Europe, that one just really interests me. Like I'm like, ooh, I want to sit for 14 hours on Uzbekistan Airways just because I can. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. For me, it depends. And if I'm traveling a lot, if I've been really busy and active, I'll try to break it up. Not even just with a layover, but even like a layover of 24 or 48 hours or a stopover to give myself a little break in between.
I've been trying to learn more about those longer layovers and stopovers.
Stopovers are a great travel hack.
Yes. I watched, I think, Brandon's on Daily Drops YouTube.
Yep.
He did a YouTube video about stopovers.
Yep.
And we're learning a lot more about those. I want to start capitalizing on those.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more popular with loyalty programs. A lot more programs are now offering them for free, even. Whether you're using points or paying cash for a ticket, plenty of airlines offer stopovers. So like TAP Air Portugal will let you add a stopover in Portugal, in Lisbon or Porto. All the Middle Eastern airlines let you add stopovers in like Doha and Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Muscat. It's a great way to sort of get a free stop in an extra destination along your journey, get to rest a little bit, see a new place. And a lot of them will even give you hotels for free. Like Turkish Airlines, I think, will put you up in a hotel for your stopover as part of your ticket that you're buying. So lots of cool stopover possibilities.
For just a long layover, how long does the layover have to be for you to leave the airport? How long is, okay, I will leave the airport, go explore and come back?
For me personally or like legally?
For you personally.
Okay. It depends on a few things.
Okay. Like,
have I been there before? Is it a new place for me? Have how easy is it to get into like the city from the airport. I guess that's pretty much it. But generally speaking, if there's a layover of like 8 hours, that's comfortable usually to go explore. I've done it with less. Like,
oh, wow.
I had a layover in Panama City, Panama, last year. I think it was like 4.5 hours, but I have a really good, my old roommate lives in Panama City now. And so I wanted to like see her. So like I left the airport, got a drink with her for like 30 minutes in the city and went back, and it was okay. It was close. But so yeah, I think it's on like a case by case basis. Do I want to do it at all? And then what do I want to do in that place? Is there enough time to do it?
Yeah. I was kind of judging you for the short time, but then as you were talking, I was like, I've done that too. I've left right outside the airport, hung out for a little bit to see someone and then come back. So I'll give it to you. All right. Keeping it in pretty much America right now, Delta or United?
United.
Marriott or Hyatt?
Oh, that's hard.
I know. I've heard your dilemmas a little bit.
I'm going to not just give you one answer, but I'm going to say Hyatt is the better program. Marriott's the one I choose.
I feel the same way. I keep seeing all these things that I should switch to Hyatt, but I'm so deep in my Marriott roots. I don't know how to make the switch.
The thing for me, so Hyatt is amazing. I only recently, like last year, started really getting into Hyatt, and it's been lovely. I love Hyatt. Stay at Hyatt all the time. But I just cannot get the same level of value that I do from Marriott. And the places I travel in the world, there is always a Marriott there. Hyatt, just not so much.
Yeah.
Hyatt has like the smallest footprint, I think, of all of the major hotel chains. In the US, they're everywhere, obviously. Right. But internationally, Marriott just cannot be beat. Like there's just always a Marriott. There's always a place I can use my points for really good value with Marriott. So I think in the US, Hyatt, internationally Marriott, but also for me, just everywhere, Marriott.
I love
Hyatt is way better than Marriott.
I love it.
To be clear.
All right. Suite upgrade or late checkout for hotels?
Late checkout. Suite upgrades are like, I've found that I try really hard to get them just for the sake of doing it. Like most of the time that I do it now, it's so I can like take a cool photo and write about it in Daily Drop. And so sometimes I like downgrade myself from suites because it's like too much space. I feel weird there by myself, and like it's just way too much space. So late checkout is always good for me. I
rarely care too passionately about the room itself, but if I can have a couple more hours to keep my stuff in or just sleep in, I like a late checkout too. All right, no foreign transaction fees or hotel free night award?
Hotel free night award.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then Chase or Capital One?
Chase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
No question.
So, final question. Where to next for Mike Dodge?
Well, lots of places. In a few days, I'm going back to Indonesia, where I just got back from a few days ago. So that'll be fun. Just never recovering from jet lag.
Amazing.
My best friend who lives in Tanzania is getting married in Tanzania. So I'm going to his wedding soon. I'm going to Myanmar to...
I love Myanmar.
That'll be good. I'm going to Syria as well in a couple months, which will be very, very interesting. Yeah, I have a bunch of places booked, but those are kind of like the highlights that I'm really looking forward to.
Well, none of those are close together, so I'm sure we will get some great newsletters on how to book some great flights.
Yeah, they're actually all on the same trip.
Oh, so. Wow. Well,
it'll be real weird.
Is there anything that you want to plug yourself? Daily Drop? Anything?
Daily Drop, I feel like I've plugged maybe too much already, but definitely check out Daily Drop, just dailydrop.com or Daily Drop on all the socials. It's just Daily Drop,
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to meet you.
Okay, could you guys tell that I was fangirling pretty much the entire time? Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on this episode of How Was Your Trip? If you guys liked this episode and want to see more travel hacking episodes, please let me know in the comments below or by emailing me at howwasyourtrippodcast@gmail.com. It would mean the world to me if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, follow, all the podcast things on whatever platform you're watching. And I can't wait to continue on this journey with you guys in 2 weeks. I'll see you there.